Hello, Algebra 2A. Welcome to day 2 of lesson 61, where we're going to talk about our last type of special advanced factoring, which is factoring by grouping. So factoring by grouping is where we can factor a GCF out of the first half and last half of the terms, and then factor out the common polynomial factor that we're going to start to see between the two terms. So this advanced factoring technique is used when you're beyond 3 terms. So when you have 3 terms of trinomial, we can use our math riddle to help us factor those. But when we get beyond 3 terms, we can start to look if we can factor by grouping. So we will take a look at example 1 part A and then example 3 part B, and those will be the 2 that we look at. And then we'll head over to Delta Math and take a look at one of those. When we're factoring by grouping, we're going to look at the first half of our polynomial, which would be these 2 terms, and then look at the last half of our polynomial, which will be these 2 terms. And we're going to look for a GCF in each of those cases. So if I look at x to the third and 8x squared, they don't have any numbers in common. This is a 1, this is an 8, but x to the third and x squared each have an x squared in common. So we are going to factor out that x squared. And then when I divide both those terms by x squared, I get x plus 8. So I factored out the x squared out of both of those, divide x squared into both those terms, and I'm left with x plus 8. Then I look at 2x plus 16. Well, I've got a 2 and a 16. They both have a common factor of 2 in them. So I factor out a 2. Divide 2x by 2, it just becomes x. Divide 16 by 2, it becomes 8. So now I've factored that 2 out, and voila, look at, I've got another x plus 8. So now that means that I can create a factoring by grouping. I can factor out now this common factor of x plus 8. And our final answer then will be x squared plus 2 times x plus 8. So that common factor of x plus 8 can factor out, and then we're left with x plus 2 factor, and then we're also left with the x plus 8 factor. So that is how we can factor by grouping. So to recap, we can look at the first half of our terms, look for a GCF, factor it out. Second half of our terms, look for a GCF, factor it out. Now we've got this common x plus 8, and we can now start to rewrite it as x plus 2, x squared plus 2, x plus 8. So I'm getting the x squared plus 2 from this term and this term. And the x plus 8 that's in common, it factors out again and becomes x plus 8. Let's move on to part 2. We've got an x to the fourth plus 5x to the third. And then secondly, we've got a negative 8x. Whoops, I meant to click my blue pen there. Negative 8x minus 40. So looking at my first terms, x to the fourth, 5x to the third, they have an x to the third in common. There it is. And then this, divide out an x to the third out of each of those, that becomes x plus 5. Now I look at my second half. I've got a minus 8x minus 40. Anytime we can change that leading term back to positive, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to factor out a negative 8 to make that turn positive again. And then divide negative 8 by negative 8 becomes positive x. Negative 40 divided by negative 8 becomes a plus 5. So there would be what it looks like after I factor out that negative 8. Now continuing, I've got this x to the third and then minus 8, so I can write that as a factor. So I'm factoring out now the x plus 5s. So x to the third minus 8 times that common factor of x plus 5. There we go. Now, if you look a little deeper, this x to the third minus 8, that is a difference of cubes. So the cube root of x to the third is x. The cube root of 8 is 2, so that'd be x minus 2 times x squared plus 2x plus 4 and then we'd still have that x plus 5 at the end. So delta math will just be factoring into two binomials only, but if we did have a difference of cubes there, we would expand that out. That x to the third minus 8 would expand out to x minus 2 times x squared plus 2x plus 4 times the x plus 5. But the main idea we're looking at is when we're factoring by grouping, take your first half of your terms, look for a GCF, take the last half of your terms, look for a GCF, and then we'll start to see that common, in this case x plus 5, or in this case x plus 8. We'll head over to Delta Math and take a look at one of those examples. So here's a problem that you each have as your first problem here, and we can factor this by grouping. So we'll look at the first half of our terms, which are x to the third plus 5x squared. Then we'll look at the second half of our terms, 9x plus 45. So first half of our terms, that'll factor into x squared, GCF, and then we'll be left inside here with an x plus 5. Then the blue will factor, looks like a 9 is in common, so we'll factor out a 9. And then again, we're left with that x plus 5. So there's your common x plus 5. So now we're going to rewrite this as x squared plus 9 times x plus 5. There we'd have it. So that should be your answer. All of you have the same exact problem for that first one. You can go ahead and try that. If this is not the year 2021 and you were watching this, then it's possible that the assignment has changed. But you can go ahead and get started. Good luck, and we'll see you next time.